like wings just as much as me and you want them to be detachable, and let's make it so you have 8 of them, then you've come to the right place. Because on this tutorial, I'm gonna be going over how I made specifically Angewomon's wings from the anime Digimon, and how I made each of the wings, including the harness, and each wing detaches from the harness. So you can go in and out of doors, you can use the restroom, and if you want, you can even use this harness for any character, not just Angewomon, that has 8 wings or tentacles or whatever you want coming out of your back. Yee! But first, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel because you want to stay up to date with all of these tutorials to help you improve all of your skills and watch all of my stupidness and my cats here. So yeah, what are you waiting for? Starting off with the harness, and for this I ended up 3D modeling the back plate as well as all of the knuckle parts, and I have that file available on my website tiffanycosplay.com. There's a link in the description, and printed all of the pieces on my Prusa XL printer using PETG filament. I highly recommend this as it's going to be the most strongest for a wing harness, and after removing all of the support and making sure each piece fit correctly, as sometimes you will need to remove a little bit of printer goop on the inside of the pieces, you'll want to grab a size 1/2 inch PVC pipe. And we're going to be using this for all of the bone structure of our wings, as well as the knuckles. And speaking of the knuckles, each knuckle you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of the PVC pipe, the length of 1.5 inches. So in total, for the 8 wings, you should have 16 pieces of this PVC pipe cut, and just use a pipe cutter to do this. And your PVC pipe is a smooth surface, and for any smooth surfaces, when you're going to use epoxy to glue it to a piece, you will want to rough up that surface. I highly recommend using 120 grit sandpaper, roughing it up, and then we're going to use 2-part epoxy to glue it into each of the locations on the back plate. Making sure to wipe up any of the extra epoxy that comes out, and after a few minutes, you'll want to put that knuckle piece on top to make sure that the pipes align correctly for each of the pieces, and then remove it. Side note, if you don't want the wings to be detachable, you can just glue each of these knuckle pieces to the actual back plate and it'll be permanently together. It'll just make transporting and wearing this harness a little bit more bulky, so keep that in mind. And after waiting 24 hours for the epoxy to fully cure, we can start working on the bone structure of the wings. And I'm going to be using my pattern for Angewomon's wings, which you can find on my website, to figure out the shape of each of these 8 wings that we're going to bend our PVC pipe into. And to figure out the length of each of these pipes, you'll want to temporarily insert that pipe into the wing knuckle and put the correlating wing pattern on top. This will then give you an indication of where we're going to start to bend our pipe. And I do this by drawing a line on the actual pattern top, following the top curvature, and then putting a line on the PVC pipe. And this is going to indicate where I'm going to focus later on my heat for where we're going to bend at that angle. And once you figure out how far you want that pipe to go up the spine of the wing, you can then cut it with a pipe cutter. And now for bending the pipe. And for this process, you will need to be wearing a respirator, have heat protective gloves, as well as in an extremely well ventilated area that has a vent to pull all of the fumes out, or do this outside, as PVC pipe releases a very toxic fume into the air. And then I grabbed a heat tool, and you're going to want to apply your heat following those Sharpie lines as a guide of where you're going to want to apply your heat. Starting at the lowest one, you're going to focus on that one first, constantly rotating your pipe as you do not want to burn it. And once the pipe starts to heat, it will then start to become loose, and you'll be able to then put it on top of your pattern, hold it into the curve that you want it to cool off into. Then once that's done, you can repeat that for each of the marks going down the pipe. And you can see here what the before and after of the pipe looks like. And once you have all 8 of those pipes bent to the correct shape that you want, it is time to attach them to the actual knuckles. And I highly recommend attaching those knuckles temporarily to the back plate. And I did this by taping them down with some masking tape. And I did this again by roughing up the connecting part of the pipe with some sandpaper and gluing them together with 2-part epoxy. And a little trick I found for putting the pipes in the correct angle that you want them to be, I ended up taping them to spray cans and water bottles while they were temporarily being glued in place. This way I would make sure that they are in the correct angle that I wanted them to sit. I would do the top wing on the left side and then the top wing on the right side, working my way down. So that way the weight was evenly contributed on both sides. And after another 24 hours of waiting for all that epoxy to glue, all of our wing harness and the bone structures were all finished, and it looked like this. Which I have to say, when I put this on for the first time, I was so excited because this was my first time making a wing harness for specifically 8 wings, and oh, it was so cool. But anyway, let's move on to the actual wing feather-like parts. And shout out to Cosplay Supplies, who provided me all of the main material that I used for these feathers, and that is actually Shape, which is a fabric-like material similar to felt, but when you use a heat tool, it actually will somewhat harden and stay stiff into the shape that you wanted, which I really loved in the end for the final look. And if you want to save some money, use my code TGC5 to save 5% off of any order from their site. And making 8 wings takes a lot of material, and I used around 7 to 8 yards in total for this. And for each of these feathers, I ended up, and I have it in my pattern, where they are segmented into different parts for each of the different wings. So that way you can create that more natural, like layered feather look. And I ended up tracing this onto the Shape using a Sharpie, followed by cutting it out with both a rotary tool as well as some scissors. Then for shaping each of the feathers so they would fluff up some, I used a heat tool and lightly heated up both sides. Then it was time to attach all the pieces, and for this I got our back plate, and then I attached the corresponding knuckles that I was working on and attached them to the back plate as well, and started to glue all of the Shape together. And for this I used Shore Bonder hot glue. And once the base piece was attached, I then got the heat tool and heated up. This is going to cause it to shrink ever so slightly and become more stiff and hardened. Especially when we start adding all the layers, this is going to be really important, and it's going to help for the glue adhering onto it. And after I got the first few layers on the back side done, I ended up turning over to the front side to work on that. And I'll note that the wing segments, use them more as a suggestion of where to place them, and then get creative and cut them to fit more correctly to the shape of your pipe, as wings aren't supposed to be perfect. So I kind of mismatched and I cut them to the correct shape so they would fill in between and look better, and then save all of the scraps, as we're going to use that to cover up the top pieces and hide any imperfections. And I'll note that just gluing all of these Shape feathers together took me 3 full days of working on this as my full-time job and watching a lot of shows on Netflix. So don't be discouraged if this is taking a long time. Remember, you're making 8 wings and it's a lot. So enjoy it, have fun, and celebrate once it's done, as these are gonna look so beautiful in the end. And the last step for finishing out these wings is the harness straps. And I'm going to be using size 1.5 inch nylon straps, as well as a parachute buckle for this piece, so that way we can adjust it as needed. And each strap is going to insert through the top part of our back plate, and you'll want to pin it in place, followed by going to your sewing machine and using either a lightning bolt or a zigzag stitch multiple times, going back and forth to ensure that it will not move and it'll hold correctly. Then just slide the strap through the bottom part and add your parachute buckle, and your harness is done. To answer a few questions that I've gotten in the past about this, the total weight of all 8 of the wings, including the harness, weighs roughly around 9.2 pounds. And for 8 wings, this is actually pretty lightweight. I will say that this CAD file, which is available on my website, just as a heads up, it is a little bit larger than your standard 3D printer. So make sure that you can print this on your own printer, or you may need to find a printer facility that has the size printer to print this. And you can find the dimensions of the harness file in the product description on my website. I'll have a link for that in the bottom as well. And I will also note that I don't recommend slicing this file to make it print on a smaller printer, as you need the structure that I have designed throughout here to make it so it can hold the weight of all 8 of the wings. And in terms of each of the wings, they are really lightweight, especially with phosphate. It is really easy. You can cut them and mold them to whatever you want. So I highly recommend this material for doing wing-like designs like this. It's a much better option than using the packing foam pieces that they just fall apart. This one will last you. And each of these pieces are detachable from the harness. I have it designed specifically where it will interlock into your harness, and it would take a lot of force to have these come off, specifically because it is attached at an angle. So it's not gonna just come off straight, it comes off slightly upward. So somebody would have to bump you from underneath with a lot of force to push this. As always, when wearing wings, especially at conventions, have a handler to help you. Do not rely on just your random stranger to take your wings on and off. It's your responsibility, if you're gonna wear a big cosplay, to be able to manage it. Is how I made Angewomon's wings from the anime Digimon, and I hope this video was helpful for you making either this character, maybe making another character using phosphate that are a lightweight material for making the angel-like wings, or maybe for helping you create a character with 8 wings. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Love to have you as part of our cosplay community here. And I'll see you for our next tutorial. And a big thank you to all of my company sponsors, as well as all of my members here on YouTube, specifically those legendary members who support me so I can continue bringing you more cosplay tutorials as my full-time job. And I'll see you for our next one. Much love, guys.